Harlem Liberation School is a black nationalist, Pan-African community organization based in Harlem. We provide relevant and credible political education to help black people wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of Brother Malcolm X. To do this, we provide panel discussions, political commentary, mini documentaries, leadership tips, classes, and interviews with some of our most dedicated and effective leaders, activists, and intellectuals around the world. The concept of Wukusu is very important to us and central to our mission. It is our greeting, our motto, and our guiding philosophy. Wukusu is an acronym for the phrase,
Wake up, clean up, stand up.
Wake up means developing black nationalist and Pan-African consciousness. Clean up tells us to identify and eliminate our self-defeating behavior that gets in the way of us being our highest selves. Stand up compels us to use our gifts and our resources to exert leadership in our communities to help liberate our people. We humbly ask you to subscribe to our channel so we can reach more people. We encourage you to like, share, and comment on our videos, and we invite you to donate to our work either through sending us a super chat here on YouTube or by sending donations through Cash App to $TRUSELF143. Now, let's build. Peace and Black Power families. Brother Ajay Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of our dear brother Malcolm X. I hope everyone is at peace, particularly if you're in the Northeast. I hope that you are staying cool, family, because it is no joke. The last I checked right now, it says 101 degrees. And that's Fahrenheit, that's straight Fahrenheit. There's nothing to do with the how it feels. That's actually 101 degrees in New York City. I can't remember the last time it was quite this hot. So family, today we're supposed to have Brother Akil Parker. I do not quite know where he is, but we're going to give about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. I'll do some announcements. We'll talk a little shop. If he's not here in 15 minutes, I'll say a little something. We will end, and maybe we'll try to reschedule. You know, in this type of venue, you have to be ready for anything. Sometimes things come up. People have emergencies or accidents or scheduling conflicts, and you got to keep rolling. You can't just stop. Got to keep it moving. So that said, first, in the last 2 months, maybe 3 months, our subscriber base has gone from 2,400 to close to 6,000. That's a little more than double. We're not satisfied though, because when I watch YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, I see a lot of foolishness and distraction and just backwardsness, you know, stuff that many of our ancestors and even our parents' generation fought against, and we're replicating it and we're making that popular. And it's taking our time away from doing real work, the type of stuff that, you know, you do that over years and you see a body of work, you see progress, whether it's money for you, whether it's freedom, whether it's fulfillment that you're using your God-given gifts, whatever it is. That's what we have to really, really chime in on, family. You don't want to live a life only to get 60, 70, 80, like, damn, what did I do with my life, right? So the white man has weaponized social media in order to distract us from the things we really need to be doing into complete foolishness, and it usually ends with us buying his bullshit. So on top of distracting us from doing real work to better ourselves, he's also promoting his goods and his ideas. We have to challenge that. And it's not saying that we can't have fun and we can't be diverse, but it's saying as we become adults, you got to have priorities. You got to get your priorities in order. Time is not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. And I don't know about you, but I am not trying to be on my deathbed with a whole long laundry list of regrets. Family, let's get it together. That said, anyone who comes on now or within the live version, the later recorded version, please remember to subscribe. Please remember to like the video. And most importantly, even more than subscribing, is to share the information. Very important that we share. Now, as we wait for our brother, like I said, I'm just going to go ahead and start. I was developing this graphic that I never really got to complete that I was going to post about a week ago. And I think it's very relevant. It's very relevant. I know that in a capitalist framework, we've been taught to believe that everything of worth and value has to do around money and economy and your physical wealth, right? And of course, I reject that premise. I believe everything of value and worth is invisible. It's not physical. Things like character, right? Character is the basis of all things that are good. And that's good character is the basis of good things, and poor character is the basis of poor things, right? So if you see somebody that you admire, oh, they're doing good, doing this and that, things that you think are worthy, beautiful, that means somewhere in there there's some good character going on. Somewhere. Maybe not in every respect. And when you see somebody that's mucking up, chances are there's some bad character traits in there. Maybe not with everything, but around the things that explain why they're mucking up. I want to get into some ethics as we wait for our brother. And actually, it's interesting because I'm actually working on creating an entire ethical program based on my yacht. Maybe we'll experiment with Harlem Liberation School when we come out in a brick and mortar sort of capacity. You know, how we mediate conflicts, everything, a whole ethical guide based on my yacht. So I'm not reinventing the wheel. But I do want to go through 9 things that I think are really simple, but I think they're really cogent, they're very powerful and poignant. And in fact, these are 9 things that I work hard to implement and by myself. So these things actually constitute my ethical code. And that's not to say that I get these right all the time, all the time, or to the degree I'd like, but they are the basis of my ethical code. And I think that they are something that we all might want to consider. So if we were to say number 1, what would be one of the things of this ethical code? There's 9 of them, 9 being the number of completion. 1 is what our brother Imhotep said, what they falsely attribute to Hippocrates from Greece, and that is do no harm. So number 1 is, and if you put this in I statements, right? I cause no harm to others. That's to be able to say that and it be at least relatively true, that's a big deal. That's a big deal because if you think about what Harlem Liberation School is trying to do, political education, liberation, self-determination, all of this is in reaction to, in response to what? Colonization, imperialism, oppression, right? We might be living completely different lives, be doing completely different things, may not be sick and dying prematurely and all types of craziness if oppression and colonization, imperialism hadn't occurred. So causing harm is a big deal. And I want to give that context. That's whether it's in the African context, that's whether it's another human being, an animal, or anything living. You know, you see people that get off on harming people, animals, children, plants, whatever. That's disturbing. And what I'm suggesting is a very good part of an ethical code for our people. I think I see the brother now. That's perfect. Is that we treat each other with respect, that we don't say or do things to harm people, at least try not to. Sometimes it's hard. That we don't put witchcraft or sorcery or all that stuff, curses on people, that we don't become obstacles in people's way, that we don't try to hold people back, that we don't spread false witness against our neighbor. We say things we know aren't true to hurt somebody. It's very important that number 1 should be cause no harm, because that covers so many things that it's almost like that could be an ethical code in and of itself. But we're going to get back to that, family. We're going to get back. I'm going to do a live. We're going to address that. Brother Akil, are you with us? I see your screen. I don't see you, though. Okay, so no problem. We'll go back to number 2. Ethical code. I am honest. Honesty is so tritely used and glibly used. You know, it's like you said you was that thing, you wasn't there. Yeah, that's one form of honesty. But you know what? That's really not the biggest form of honesty. The biggest form of honesty is honesty with yourself. Who am I? Am I all I say I am? If I'm not all I say I am I working to be all I say I am? That's honesty. Am I upfront and transparent with my motivations? Am I misleading people? Am I telling people what they want to hear to make them feel good? All of that's honesty. Am I doing in my profession, in my service, am I doing something that that gives me joy, that I enjoy doing, right? If people or institutions in my community are acting in a way that is unethical or oppressive or abusive, do I stand by and say and do nothing? Or do I say, hey, I know this is uncomfortable, you probably not gonna, but I don't think we should do this. If it's with a person, if it's with an institution, protest it. Don't let it stand and complain about it in the quiet of your home. Do something about it. That's the history of our people. We've always stood up. We've always said, no, we don't agree with this we paying fares and going to the back of the bus. We just as good as anybody else, right? It's in that same, so when we say honesty, it's all of that, right? It's not a simple, you said you was at so-and-so. No, that's the smallest part of honesty, right? It's honest with yourself, right? And then honesty with others, honesty with your job, with your organization, with your mates, with your family, everybody. Honesty is a huge term that tends to get really compartmentalized to really cheap, self-serving and selfish sort of thing. Honesty is really a beautiful term because it creates what? Trust. Creates, when you say something, people know, oh yeah, this person, they're going to be there, they're going to be there. They're going to be there this time, they're going to be there that time. Because over all this time, I've seen, number 3, I keep my word. Right? We're going to get back to this. I think I see Brother Akil. I'm going to bring Brother Akil on. Now, first of all, let me say this. Brother Akil Parker is really, man, I think the brother's phenomenal. And I'm going to say this. And it's saying I'm not one that gives, is a flatterer or a coddler. I say what I believe. I believe he's phenomenal. And I believe he's phenomenal because unlike so many people that you see on YouTube and these social media that's just running their mouth, just to run their mouth, you could tell. They got really nothing to say. They're just talking. Hi there. Foolishness. This brother you could tell he's given thought. He's carefully thought about who he is and what he brings, what his gift is, what his tool set is, right? And in his case, one of the tools he has in his arsenal is a strong math understanding and sensibility and a great passion behind making sure that our community normalizes math proficiency, normalizes math confidence, the same way we normalize who got the latest this and who got the fattest that, right? He's challenging something in our community that's reactionary, but he's doing it in his lane. And I think that's really, and I told the brother, man, I think what you're doing is really a mighty work. And he also provides tutoring to people who want, tutoring in math. He's written a book. We're gonna get into all these things, but I really think he's an example of a quality I think we all should have, and that's don't just jump out and do stuff. Give careful thought. What are my gifts? What do I enjoy doing? When I do this, the community responds, and I do this well. And choose that lane and run that lane as hard as you can. And I believe God put something in every one of us. And to me, that's what he's doing. I'm not saying that's all he does or that's all he knows, but I think that's a very important contribution. And without further delay, we're going to bring on my good brother. He's been on maybe two or three times before, so he's no stranger. We're going to bring our brother Akil Parker to the building. How you doing, good brother?
Peace, Baba. I'm doing well. Doing well.
Good, good, good. Good to see you, man. Listen, I'm sorry we had to push the time back, man. I mean, the Queen was out there in the 200-degree heat trying to make sure we don't get this bum as the mayor of New York City again. So for the primary, man. So we apologize we had to push it back, man.
I get it. Doing part of your civic duty.
Yeah, man. Glad you're here, brother. And we're gonna get right into it, brother Kill. I got some questions I think are really good. First, let me put up what we're talking about to letting people know to visit his YouTube channel, All This Math.
I appreciate that.
And subscribe to it. And for real, if you're an adult, if you're 70 or 17 or 7, check it out. If you good with math or you're not good with math, show it for your kids. Watch with your kids. He has his own daughter in some of these. It's really good. Check it out. I also want to tell you what we're talking about for today. Akil Parker, math education and proficiency in the Black community. And I'm going to start with this. Akil Parker wants to increase math proficiency and enrichment in the Black community. Brother, is this an accurate statement? Yes or no? And whatever it is, please elaborate on that statement.
That's a very accurate statement. A very, very accurate statement. And the reason that I want to do that is because, so for my 20 years of math teaching experience, one of the things I've learned that is so critical is that quite often we don't have a proper definition of what mathematics actually is as a tool and what it represents and what it can do for us if we were to embrace it and then, become proficient and then, find mastery within it, achieve mastery within it, is that, I think about the Elijah Muhammad quote, which Malcolm was very famous for saying when he would say, of all of our studies, history is the most equipped to reward our research. I think about that quote a lot. And the way I relate that quote to math, I leverage that quote and I say that of all of our studies and all of our disciplines, mathematics, I believe, is the most equipped to develop our critical thinking ability and analytical reasoning skills, which can lead to our ability to solve not only our individual problems, right, but our collective community-wide problems, right? So like math is like, I had a friend that would always kind of, throw this out there, they would say, all roads lead to math. Because when we be having conversations, it's like I always find a way to make it into something algebraic, something geometric or whatever, because I'm just immersed in it. But it actually, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because when we study our scholars, we study our African-centered scholars, our elders, whether they be ancestors or those still present doing this work. When I listen to them, I hear the ideas and the insights and the analysis that they provide to us. It makes a lot of sense to me because they're essentially mathematical principles. And they just, it's about balance. It's about, the equations got to make sense. This got to add up. Like, okay, well, how can this group of people really feel this way? And when they actually over here doing this, and, it's all about contradictions and exposing contradictions, or maybe that, in some situations there may not be a contradiction, but all of that is very mathematical to me. So what I've come to find is that, and also it seems very interesting that math would be a subject that it's like a common denominator. We're all exposed to it in school. Like we go to school, we take a math class every single year from kindergarten up through high school. But yet so many people in our population, such a high percentage of people are like, they hated math. They didn't do well in it, and it just reminds me of, something Amos Wilson said, which is, the challenge for this society, this Western society that we live in, which we know is an oppressive society, but the challenge for this society is, how do we maintain the status quo of oppression? How do they maintain the status quo of oppression while still trying to give the impression that they're trying to benefit everyone within the society, even those that they're oppressing? So to me, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we got to expose them to the math, but we still got to figure out ways to make sure that they don't learn it. Because once they learn it, then they'll become problem solvers. Because when you're learning math, you're simultaneously developing critical thinking ability and analytical reasoning ability. And then a lot of us don't even know how to identify problems. So, sometimes, people go into situations and physical spaces and they think it's sweet. And you've probably been in a situation where you're in a room when it's like It's 100 people in the room. You in there, maybe some, somebody, a couple people you cool with, like-minded individuals. Y'all sitting there, y'all listen to what the speaker just said, and everybody's clapping and cheering, and y'all sitting there because y'all got a different analysis. Y'all like, do y'all not hear what this man just said? and y'all, it's only a few of y'all, but everybody else is clapping and cheering. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see. Y'all don't get it. Y'all don't understand what he just said, right? Y'all are stuck on a superficial level, and you don't know that what he's telling you is that no, nothing's going to change in your community. Like your tax dollars aren't going to be used for this, right? Or yeah, we're about to come in here, we're about to gentrify all of this, right? He just said it, but he or she didn't use a very basic language, right? That would have been required for you to really understand it and comprehend it, right? So, but again, I think that it's the mathematics, the arithmetic as a foundation, which leads us to being able to understand the algebra and the geometry, and then the higher level math, the pre-calculus, the calculus, the statistics, all of that, the college level math classes, right? That the math majors take, engineering majors take, and whatnot. It'll open up our minds, So that's why I'm very much, pro mathematics, So that's why I want to do. I do what I'm doing. That's why I'm committed to this. Also, this young brother came in here. So this guy, you probably see him on my channel too.
Got the young one in there. Got the youngin. What's up, youngin? What's he showing me?
He's got his iPad. He's playing some games on his iPad.
How you doing, brother? Nice to see you,
check me out. But yeah, he can't. I got the headphones in, so he can't hear you.
Okay.
But that's another reason, because we got to be the primary educators for our children, and it's I'm not going to say it's easy for me, but I think it's maybe easier for me because I am a mathematician and I am an educator. So it comes naturally that, if I'm teaching other people's children, I'm definitely going to teach my own. But in terms of being community oriented, one of the reasons I created the YouTube channel as an example is because I wanted to model for other people in our community. Like, look, first and foremost, before I'm a math teacher, before I'm a mathematician, I'm a father first. And this is my responsibility to teach these things to my children in order to protect them. As a protector, I want to give them these skills so that they'll be able to make better decisions. If they can make better decisions, then then they may be able to be safer. And
Brother Kill, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
go ahead.
Since you mentioned it, it's perfect segue. Tell us more. See, a lot of people have ideas and mad about something, but they don't necessarily take that and start a channel. That takes a lot of initiative, as you know. So I want to know, what got you from just our people do bad in math and they psyched out that they can't do math, and our ancestors were masters of math and they need math. What took you from that stage to, I'm going to start a whole YouTube channel about it? Why'd you do that? And what do you think that your channel offers the community, people who come and watch it?
So it was an ongoing process. So one of the things that influenced me was a professional development I attended when I was teaching at Overbrook High School in West Philly. That's the Will Smith and Will Chamberlain's alma mater. I'm teaching there, and we had to do a professional development on hybrid learning. What they were talk about hybrid learning, and they were talking about back in 2017 how in the future, actually this might have been 2016, but they were talking about in the future of education, we're not going to be, the goal is going to be not just an instructor, right, doing 100% of the instruction. The instructor might be there to offer maybe 50% of the instruction, but then the other 50% would come from videos, right? And a lot of, at this time also, I was noticing that a lot of the schools, not that school that I was at that time, later on they were being equipped with smart boards in every classroom, right? So they were getting smart boards in every classroom. So then I'm just kind of just, watching and, and paying attention and whatnot. And my background is in finance. That's what my degree is. So I'm always thinking about, things in terms of business. Okay. And I understand how, the Western society, these Europeans are, everything's about the bottom line, right? It's really not about humanity. It's about, how much money can we make? How much money can we save? How can we maximize profit? So the idea was kind of planted back then. A couple years later, after I left the school district of Philadelphia and I was full-time doing tutoring, I still was thinking like, I need to start this YouTube channel. I was watching other people you know, on YouTube and whatnot, doing their thing. And a lot of people have resources that I would use. And then one day I had a tutoring session with a young sister, and she, you know, her teacher had given them a Khan Academy. I don't know if you're familiar with Khan Academy. Khan Academy is a pretty popular online like YouTube resource for, you know, academic support. And they offer math videos, and actually they offer videos in, you know, several subjects. But the teacher, and her math teacher, uploaded a Khan Academy video so the students could have support. But the tutoring session was an hour long, but for 45 minutes of the session, it involved me explaining the Khan Academy video to her. So then as a result, I sat back and I thought about it, and I said, wait a minute, why don't I just cut out the middleman and just start making my own content, right? And then around that time, then the pandemic hit. So then everything went, you know, online anyway. So then it was as great a time as ever. So now we're in like March 2020. And I'm just, you know, I'm recording videos here and there, but, you know, I'm dealing with issues of perfectionism. So, you know, my videos don't look as polished as some of these other guys that are online. And but I had to do work to get over that, you know, and just, you know, be able to, you know, make my content and it just grow. Right. So, and now here we are 5 years later, you know, with me, I was, you know, at some points I was a little more consistent than others. At some points I was doing more tutoring. Sometimes I was doing less tutoring. So I was recording more content. But really, you know, I understand that. I think that also schools, the public schools and the charter schools and even the private schools that we don't control, my long-term goal is for us as a community, and this is where the YouTube channel comes into play as a resource. Those institutions need to be navigated as spaces for practice of skills that are learned in the home and in the community. But that's going to take, I mean, that's a great thing for me to say. That's a very lofty ideal and thing for me to say, right? But it's going to take a lot of work. It's really a paradigm shift, because for so long we've been conditioned and socialized to send our children to school. And like, especially with subjects like math, it's like, as parents, we're like, well, you know, I don't really got to be that good at math, because as long as I sent you to school and they got math teachers there that are good at math, that can teach you the math. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. We see it. It doesn't work for our children. It doesn't really work for anybody's children, but I'm focused on our children. And so those spaces are equipped, I think, for practice. So math class has to become like recess, in the sense that children like recess because they get to go to recess and show off that and highlight their skills in basketball, football, baseball, kickball, soccer, whatever, but skills that they learned in their community, in their neighborhood, on their block, around the way, at the rec center, from their family, their big cousins, their siblings, their friends, right? They're not learning those skills primarily at school most of the time, right? So what happens is math class has to be the same way, right? So the kids got to be able to step into a math class, you know, the little girls and the little boys with that same confidence that they have when they go to recess and step on a basketball court. Like I'm about to cook you. I'm about to give you 20 or 30, right? You gotta be able to go into the math class like, yeah, let's do these. Give me these equations. Let's go. I'm with it. Let's go, right? But in order for them to be able to do that, the community has to be equipped to be able to teach that in the house, in the kitchen, in the car, have those mathematical conversations. But they need resources. So that's really why, you know, I've been adding content to the channel, why we're almost at 1,000 videos, because I really want for this channel to be like, listen, if you're in the Black community, you want to learn math, you want to brush up on your skills, you want to be able to teach your own children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your little cousins, godchildren, whoever, this is the place for you to go. Like, come here. You're gonna see a Black man teaching the math that's very proficient at it. Also, you're gonna get some Black history at the same time, right? So that's really the goal, like at this point. But it's been an ongoing process in terms of me developing the mission. Because like when I first set out and started the channel back in, like I said, March 2020, I didn't have it all figured out. I just was like, I know I need to create some online content, kind of just as a way to also to supplement my tutoring. Because I sat back and realized also, I said, man, like I can't tutor everybody, but it would be nice if, you know, for the people I can't tutor, or the people that, you know, it may be, you know, people may be economically insecure, may not be able to afford my tutoring fees. I'm like, cool, I got a free option for you. As long as you got Wi-Fi, you can go online, you can pull up a video, like watch it at your leisure, watch it at your convenience, and, you know, take some notes and pause and rewind if you don't understand, you know. So it's there for you.
I'm sorry, Akil. I'm sorry. Is this actual question isn't on my list of questions, but I noticed that I've seen some, and you have a daughter named Masada, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's my middle
And I
child.
noticed you say again.
She's my middle child.
Oh, that's what's up. Is that your son,
Yeah, this is my youngest. This is my baby boy. This is Kwame.
brother Kwame? You named after Kwame Nkrumah.
Indirectly. So I named him after
Nice.
Kwame Toure, who we know
Okay.
renamed
Yes,
himself
sir.
after Kwame Nkrumah. So yeah,
Nice,
indirectly named
nice,
after Nkrumah.
nice. Got a powerful name and legacy right there, young man.
Yeah.
I noticed that when you do the math, it's like it reminds me as a social studies teacher, or whatever teacher you had at school. You remember, because they had a knack for like introducing something in an unorthodox way, so it kind of hooks you in. I noticed that you have these different things. Like I was like, how is he gonna? I see the title. I say, okay, how is he gonna pull this one off? And you find a way, like, and you have a name. Is that called hystematics?
Yeah. So the hystematics teaching framework is something I decided to formalize it and kind of codify something that I've been doing throughout my whole career, and really something that I think a lot of our our ancestors and elder teachers have done too. I just created a framework for it and tried to get back in 2019. I kind of put pen to paper and said, okay, well, what if I made this into something that could be duplicatable, right? As a teaching, as a pedagogical method, essentially, right? So that's hystematics, where I use our African history and African American history as an entry point for mathematics lessons. And vice versa, I use the mathematics lessons as an entry point for the African and African American history as well. I give you an example, like with elementary age students, if we're talking about division, right? So there's the long division algorithm, which we're probably real familiar with, right? That's how I learned it, 40 years ago. But the part when you drop the number down, after you do your division, multiplication, and subtraction, then you drop the next digit down from the dividend, right? So as I'm doing these problems, I'm like, wait a minute, this reminds me of something. This reminds me of, imagine a map of the United States, right? And we think about reverse migration patterns. How, like, like my family, right? I was born in the Bronx, but when I was 7 years old, my parents decided for us to migrate down to Baltimore. So I ended up growing up in Baltimore. We were part of that reverse migration in the 1980s. I had some cousins that were also born in New York, and a handful of them relocated to Atlanta. So, and there's so many of our historical figures that did the same thing. I think about, like, speaking of Kwame right here, Kwame Toure as a student at Howard in the summers. What was he doing? He was in SNCC. So he ends up going from DC down to Mississippi. So the beauty of that is, we can, while we're having the conversation about, okay, this is how we do long division, we're practicing our mathematical computation, developing our math fluency, our arithmetic skills, we can also have the conversation about our historical experience. And what that also does is it takes the math out of the abstract means that it's already often introduced as, and it puts a story to it. So now the math has a story attached to it. So now the math becomes more meaningful. It's kind of like it's not as boring. And then for parents watching this, they see me doing that. Like, and what I encourage the parents to do is say, use your own personal family history for this, your own genealogy. Like you're practicing long division with your children. Talk about how great grandma, might have moved back down south or whatever. And also there's another division method that is on it. If you go online, it's called the box method. But with the box method, you draw like a rectangle, you draw some columns. But what you do with that method is once you do the subtraction step, then you move the number up to the right. So there's a northern migration pattern. So then that reminds us of the Great Migration from the early 20th century. All the people leaving Alabama, going up to Chicago, leaving Mississippi, going up to Chicago, Detroit, wherever. My grandmother, rest her soul, she passed away last October. She was from Alabama, a small town not too far from Tuskegee. She first migrated east to Georgia and then ended up north, and part of that migration, that Great Migration in New Jersey. So the thing about them, so again, we're using the math as an entry point for we really want to have the conversation about our migration patterns in our history. And, it's us telling our history, but it's like, while we're telling our history, we can, we can learn some math at the same time and practice our mathematical skills. And it really goes hand in hand, because another thing I realized is that in order to really understand our history, we got to be able to do quantitative reasoning. A lot of us, we don't have the quantitative reasoning skills. So, like, for example, if you don't understand like what a percentage is, how to calculate a percentage, and what a percentage represents as a piece of information, if you read one of the books by our scholars, and the scholars like, well, yeah, so in 1952, like 16% of the black population in Detroit or New York or Baltimore or wherever were doing blah blah blah, whatever. You might be able to read that, but if you don't know what a percentage is, you have no idea what you just read. Right. So the math is really key to us really like understanding like what it is we're being presented with, and it really goes hand in hand, because it's, again, like a child in the math class, they don't understand percentages, they'll get exposed. They can't hide. But a lot of those same children can go into their social studies class or their U.S. history class, and as long as they can recognize words, even if they can't do the critical reading, but if they can just recognize syllables and words and read them out loud, that teacher may not know that, wow, that sentence he just read or she just read, she has no idea what that sentence means. Why? Right. Because of the math deficiency. Right. Mm-hmm.
That's right. So now, speaking of history books, you, in addition to the YouTube channel, you've written a book called How to Use All This Math, which is kind of I don't know if the YouTube channel came first, but the YouTube channel is called All This Math. So the book is like how to use all this math. So it kind of takes you back to the YouTube channel. I think that came out in what, 2023?
Yes, 2023.
So say again.
Yeah. So 2023. Yeah, that came out after the channel was already out. The book is really it's a resource guide for parents, elders, anybody in the community that wants to prepare their children for math class. Because again, we want to get out of this mentality of just completely outsourcing the responsibility of education to the public school system, charter schools, or whatever, especially if we don't control them. Because I always think about, shout out to, Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who's still a political prisoner right now, in the 1960s, when he said that any institution that you do not control will be used as a weapon against you. So we don't control the schools, so they're weaponized against us. So we gotta really be able to prepare our children for math class, right? So what I do in the book is I take examples of like everyday activities like riding around in the car, maybe riding on the bus, going to the grocery store, coming into the kitchen to get a snack when your kids want to get a snack. And I show you how just from those activities, those basic, mundane, regular activities that they do on a daily basis, and that's important too, because that's how you get the repetition. Those can be become opportunities for teachable moments, and in arithmetic practice, algebraic practice, geometry practice, and that way. So my goal is for that is so when your children are in the 5th grade and they walk into the math class, or 4th grade, walk into the math class, and they're like, the teachers are introducing a new standard or the new topic, then they never have the chance to feel overwhelmed, because when they see that, they're like, oh, this is familiar to me. Again, it's like recess. It's like, oh, you want to play some basketball? Cool. We play basketball all the time around the way. You want to play football? Cool. We throw the football around, play football around the way all the time. Now, when we come into the math class, it's the same thing. We have the children's gonna have the familiarity, right? So that's what the book is for. The book is meant to empower the parents to be able to become and act as the primary educators. And another thing about I want to say about not only the book but also the YouTube channel, I'm very adamant about providing our people with resources, because oftentimes our people get a lot of what I term as destructive criticism. Because the destructive criticism is just like, because it's so easy to, punch down on Black people, right? Especially Black parents and whatnot. And people are like, try to play games and act as if they're saying it, because, people need to hear it and so that it'll benefit them. But it's like, you don't want to benefit them, because if you did, you provide some resources and you communicate in a different way, right? So I'm big on constructive criticism, but if there's constructive criticism about what Black parents can do differently, we got to provide resources to go along with that, right? It's got to be resources. Now, granted, everybody's not going to take advantage of the resources for a lot of different reasons, but at a minimum, at least, look, I'm gonna provide it. It's there. We all adults. If you don't take advantage, well, I don't know what to tell you, but but I think it's much better than just making the criticism. That's just right. especially like you mentioned earlier, like on YouTube and on the internet, a lot. It's very popular and very very in style to just as it always has been to just talk down on Black people. You get a lot of clicks, you get a lot of views, you get a lot of traffic, to your channel or your page or whatever. If you just talk bad about Black people, right? Talk bad about all the things that Black people not doing and Black people should be doing. But I'm like, all right, cool, we already know that. Let's provide some solutions. As a mathematician, I'm trying to solve the equation. So I'm trying to solve the problem. But a lot of people just kind of want to wallow in the problem because it's lucrative.
And it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy.
It doesn't require a lot of work.
Nah, there's none.
Now listen, you first of all, let me say this. So I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking of something that my uncle used to say. Rest in peace to Uncle Wesley. He used to say that everything is math. Mm-hmm. I was young, so I take it that he probably was really good at math. But I used to stay at my grandmother's house so I wouldn't be a latchkey kid. And then my father picked me up from work and take me home after school. And he would play the piano. He had a piano in my grandmother's house. He would play, and he had this thing to it. And I used to say, Uncle, what is that? It says a metronome. I said, what does that do? Why do you need that? He said, it helps me keep the rhythm. I said, but why do you need that to keep the rhythm? And he was trying to break it down mathematically.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that just to say that he used to say everything is math. And that's when he started to say everything's math. Rhythm, beats, all that is math. When we, as an MC, a former MC, we spitting bars. We know that bars is a certain measurement of time. And you want to get a certain amount of syllables or words in a certain amount of time. That's math. So it's really interesting that I never had any teacher in school tell me that. But my uncle, who was not a math teacher, interestingly told me, man, everything is math. Breathing, he broke dancing, all that, playing music. So I think it's really interesting. Let me ask you this. You've described math as a tool of empowerment for our people. Could you summarize what that means and why it's so important that young brothers like Kwame or other Black youth really understand math, and not only understand it and become proficient, but embrace it and appreciate it?
Yeah, so two main reasons. Two main reasons for me is as I said earlier, it's a great tool or vehicle, I should say, for developing our critical thinking ability and our analytical reasoning ability. And if you say, well, why would I need that? Because we need to be able to solve problems, and those are two elements of problem solving. And even before we can solve a problem, we need to know how to identify a problem. And then we need to know how to be able to do analysis and, kind of check our work, so to speak, and say, okay, well, is this going to work? Or, maybe how can I modify this approach, or how can I change this, or, or whatever, or what have you. So that's why it's a tool of empowerment, because it teaches us how to solve our problems. And, I'll reference, Amos Wilson again. One of the things he said was, that, the problems of the Black community are a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? And he said this, what is this, we in 2025 now? So he's saying this back in the early 90s. So that's almost 40 years ago. So if it was a multi-billion-dollar industry back then, I'm sure it's a $100 billion industry now. And so, but the issue is, once we solve these problems, then what happens to that industry? That industry essentially is gonna dissipate, because now you're not gonna be able to profit off of those problems no more. So that's why I see it as, a term, of a tool of empowerment. And then, when we think about it as an example, especially now, I see I see a lot of individual solutions, or solutions for individuals, that are marketed to us as solutions for the collective. And without the proper analytical ability, you may not recognize that. right? And also, and further, sometimes these solutions for individuals, right? Especially if they're like economic solutions or like, okay, just get rich. Like, if we can let these like, 1% of the black community or 0.001% of the black community go get rich, then, that's going to help everybody. And it's like, nah, it actually won't help everybody necessarily. It could, but in many cases it won't. And in fact, it's going to help to maintain a status quo, right? But you need a certain level of analytical ability to even see that, right? Because somebody will tell you real fast, some corporation that may be sponsoring the program because they know it's going to help maintain the status quo. Some politician that's going to sponsor that because they know it's going to maintain the status quo. But then you're not able to sit there and read in between the lines and figure that out. And then you just go for it, thinking that it's going to help you too. And it's like, kind of like how, like, these poor white people want to, like, say, oh, Trump said we should do this, so let's go ahead and do this. It's going to help us. No, it's not going to help you. It never was meant to help you. You just fell for the okie doke because you didn't have the analytical ability neither. But as I keep saying, the math, like just sitting in class doing math problems, solving equations. So when the kids will say, why I need to learn this? I'm never going to use this in life. How is this ever going to help me? This is BS. I'm never going to need this, right? What they don't realize, again, is that superficial approach, right? They don't understand what's embedded within that practice, right? It's kind of like similar to an athlete, and when you're training for football, basketball, baseball, whatever, you do calisthenics, you run drills. And that when it's actual game time, you're not gonna be, in Madison Square Garden, get the half court and stop and just do some jumping jacks, put the ball down, start doing jumping jacks. No, put the ball down and start give me 20 push-ups. You're not doing that in the actual game. But the benefit of doing those jumping jacks in practice, the benefit of doing those push-ups in practice and in the off season, it comes out in the game in terms of helping you with your game. This is how the mathematics is. It helps us to be better thinkers. And when we're better thinkers, we can figure stuff out and be able to, solve problems, right? Which is what we need. We got to be able to solve problems. And now we got to be even more careful because this leads to media literacy. Because a lot of us are very media illiterate, right? They're giving us all these ideas and we don't even dig it. We don't even know it, right? We got to be able to recognize these things, right? We got to be able to. So yeah, so that's why I say it's a tool of empowerment. And it's funny how like it's never marketed that way. Like even early in my own teaching career, the things I'm saying right now, and I've been saying for the past few years, I wasn't thinking on that level back in 2005. I was very much just caught up in the superficial, like, okay, teach them how to solve these equations, teach them how to, simplify these expressions, the variables, okay, do this. Very much, kind of just follow the processes, but don't think about the concepts embedded within the processes. And I think, that's probably speaks to like what your uncle was talking about, is the concept within it, whereas a lot of times, and I think that brings us to another issue when people are very, uncomfortable with what they call new math, even though it's not really new. Because if you really study it, and I've been doing some study of like some ancient mathematical methods from ancient Kemet and other parts of the continent, and I see when I'm studying their work, I'm like, wait a minute, oh, this is what they're doing in Common Core math now. This is just a partial quotients method that people are complaining about, calling it new math, and here it is. Our ancestors was doing this 6,000 years ago, and this is documented. It's old math, rebranded and repackaged as new math. That's really all it is. And it really just what it does is, because when I came up, we learned the algorithms. We learned, okay, long division. These are the steps, memorize them, get the right answer, keep it moving, go into the next problem. Get the repetition in, which is great. But if you ask me how it worked, I couldn't tell you. Now what the a lot of the curricula are doing is trying to show the children why it works. Now the challenge with it is that the teachers got to be properly trained. So it's a great idea, but the teachers got to be properly trained. So if the teachers aren't trained, then it's the blind leading the blind. So yeah. And it may not be effective. But the Common Core math, I wasn't a fan of it at first neither. So I'm gonna say that too. you know, but I was converted, you know, once I had to study it and really like learn like some of the different methods. I realized, I said, oh no, this is pretty helpful. I wish I'd have learned it this way 30 years ago, you know, because it would have helped me when I got to higher level math, because I had some rough patches in, you know, higher level math at times, and I realize now it was due to a lack of conceptual understanding. So I think that's key too. Like for our people to have a conceptual understanding of math. Otherwise, you get caught up in the whole thing of thinking that it's just a bunch of BS, bunch of formulas to memorize. You'd be like, I'm never going to use this in life, or never going. But if you understood the concept behind it, then the concept is solid. Because then you'd be like, oh no, I am going to use this in the grocery store, or I'm going to use this when I'm trying to go to the party or whatever. I got to plan out and budget my money for this trip. Yeah, exactly. I got to conceptually, I got to understand the concept so I can make better choices. But yeah,
let me ask you this, brother Akil. I noticed, I mean, I was a social studies teacher, but obviously I had friends that taught other subjects, and we would talk about our experiences in the classroom. And the brothers that taught math would always say that our kids seem to have what they call math anxiety. They seem to be so anxious about math, and they would say stuff like, I'm not good at math. I'm scared of math. I don't, you know, and all these type of statements. I want to know, what do you think? First of all, do you agree that segments of our kids and adults, if we're honest, have this kind of anxiety towards math? And if you agree with that, what do you think are the root causes of that?
So I do think that a lot of people do have anxiety towards math. And I think that the reason for that is just a very strong and consistent amount of propaganda. There's a lot of negative propaganda around mathematics. And we constantly, you know, digest it. You know, we're ingesting it on a daily basis from birth, you know. And it's really, you know, I was going to say this, you know, in terms of, you know, connecting it to our ancestors and our scholars. It's a form of menticide, right? It's a form of menticide. And I think about when you know, listening to those old lectures of Bobby Wright or reading the psychopathic racial personality. And when he talks about menticide, he's like, you know, he defines it as the deliberate and systematic destruction of a group's mind with the ultimate goal being the extermination of that group. So you got such a large percentage of our population walking around talking about math is unimportant and math is too difficult. Like that's insane when you think about it. When you think about it, but we're convinced of that. We're convinced of that, and I think it's part of that menticidal process that we buy into it, right? And then this idea that, you know, black people don't do math, you know, that's not for me, you know, that's for them other people, right? And for us to accept that, that's menticide. Our brains are being destroyed, right? We're being destroyed. Like by buying, this is a result of our brains being destroyed, us buying into those types of ideologies. And also, like, you know, it's an example of us being essentially tricked out of our birthright. Because often, you know, a lot of our scholars, you know, and people will say, you know, our ancestors, you know, we created math, you know, ancient Kemet and whatnot, and that's cool. But it wasn't until recently that I realized, I think, a very important reason why that becomes very important. The fact that it comes from our ancestors is because, like Kwame Ture said this in the lecture that I just came across. We have a responsibility to carry on that tradition and continually contribute to it. So if our ancestors 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago made these contributions to mathematics in terms of its development, okay, we got a responsibility right now to continue that contribution, right? It's part of, like, you know, just carrying on tradition, as we say. But a lot of us, we're getting tricked out of our birthright by them telling us in subtle ways, or some not so subtle, that math isn't for us. And math is the exclusive domain of either the Europeans, so all the formulas are named after them in our textbooks, right? Or the Asians and the Arabs, you know, those racial stereotypes, they're always great at math or whatever. We get tricked out of our birthright. It really is our birthright. Because when we go to the history, like we're the first human beings. And we wouldn't have been able to have thriving civilizations without the use of mathematics and high level mathematics. Right. So yeah, there's just, I think there's just a lot of propaganda that's meant to keep us away from math. Right. And I think it's really
to
just
add to that too, brother Kill. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about what Dr. Amos Wilson said. In order for white supremacy to work, black people must be out of their minds. So in other words, every negative thing that we go through is functional. It's not just they don't like us, and it's functional. It's designed to make us governable,
right,
gullible,
yeah,
accept our oppression. So I'm thinking, what are all the things that we cannot do effectively if we don't know math? I'm thinking business. I'm thinking economics.
STEM,
I'm thinking problem solving, analysis. So, man, if you can't run business and have economy, you can't solve problems, you can't do analysis, you're destined to be enslaved. You're destined to be destitute and subjugated.
This is another part of the mental side, is that there are so many things that we do believe we should be doing, that we do excel in, right? As a collective, it's accepted that, okay, you're supposed to be good at spades if you're black. You're supposed to know how to play spades.
Right.
Spades is not an easy game to be good at. It's easy to know the rules, but it's not easy to be good at spades, right? But a lot of us are good at spades, and I would argue that there's a lot of algebra that people quiver and fear at. They be shaking in their boots like like the gooch is coming or something, right? So they shake it in their boots, and it's like, nah, this is much easier than that thing that you do on a regular basis, right? This is far easier than that. But it's that belief. You believe, like a lot of us, at its inception, this is another reason. The math class has to become like recess, because as soon as you step in the door, a lot of kids, they step in the classroom like, oh, this math class, their whole demeanor changes because they've already accepted defeat. It's like, no, I've never been good at math. I'm not going to be good at this. And then when, based on how a lot of us are socialized and how we navigate mistakes and how we view failure, right? We may have never been taught to fail forward and use failure to grow from, right? You go into the math class, you try to do the problem, you get it wrong. You say, oh, see, I told you, I'm not good at math. And it's like, again, that's menticidal. It's like, bro, you're not supposed to get it right the first time.
That's right.
Why do you think you're supposed to get it right the first time? I remember learning how to ride my bike. A lot of people probably had these stories. I fell a whole bunch of times. Still got the scrapes on my knees, right? From years ago, right? But you finally figure it out. And then you ride. You develop that muscle memory, and then you ride. Math is very similar. And it's a lot of different topics. And then once you master one topic, then you go to the next one. But so many of us, again, because I think because of that menticidal process, we believe that, oh, I'm supposed to just fully understand it automatically. It's supposed to just come naturally to me. Like, nah, that's not even realistic. That's not a realistic expectation.
That's right.
So yeah, there's so much negative propaganda around the math, and it just and this is why I reached out to you to come on. Part of why I reached out to you to come on your platform again is because I think part of the solution is us having more positive conversations around math, so people can hear. Because usually in our community, we have the negative, the doom and gloom conversations, the negative conversations around math. Oh, I was never good at math. I hated math. I could never do it. You never see the black people that excelled at it. And I'm trying to have some positive conversations around math. Like, nah, like this is no, we can do this. We can do this. So it's really because
that frequency.
Yeah, because one of my goals is to change the relationship. Because it's really, that's what it is. The relationship we have with mathematics. Any math teacher will tell you, any serious math teacher will tell you, the content itself is not that difficult relative to a lot of things that human beings and people in our community just do on a regular basis anyway. It's not that difficult, but it's the belief. It's that belief that we have that we can't do it. First, we believe we can't do it. And then it's like a Kwame Ture quote. It talks about American capitalism. He says American capitalism will not only make you ignorant, but then it makes you arrogant in your ignorance.
Yeah.
So it's virtually like, oh, well, I don't think I can do this. And then you try to justify it to assuage your ego by saying, man, I don't need to do this. I don't need to know this anyway. I'm never going to use this. Why I need to know this? One thing I want people to understand is this concept of asymmetrical warfare. And a lot of parents, I want parents to think about this that may be listening. Because I've heard parents say things like, nah, my child doesn't really need to study calculus and, or go beyond, pre-calculus. They don't need all that high level math. They just need basic math, whatever. I'm like, well, do you ever think about who the people are that do know the high level math and then what they're able to do and what they're doing with their lives and who they're working for and what decisions they're making and what algorithms they're creating and what equations and formulas they're using? So if you send up there saying, okay, well, these people are working for government agencies, these people are working for corporations, these people have PhDs and master's degrees in high-level mathematics, they know a lot of math. And then for you to say, well, my child doesn't need to know that much math, you're setting them up, as I said, asymmetrical warfare. These people are heavily armed with all types of, proverbial nuclear weapons and tanks and all types of stuff, B-2 bombers. And you sending your child in there with a pocket knife, they're not going to survive. So I think that's another thing we got to think about. We got to think about when we say things like, well, my child doesn't need this. I say, okay, cool. Well, who are the people that do need it and that are learning it? And then how do you reconcile that? How is your child's existence going to interact with the fact that those people do know all this math? That's another thing I just want people to think about. If they've never thought about that before. If they are one of those parents that says, my children don't need to know that much math.
Now, Brother Akil, we're coming to the end of our time. We're going to have to get you back, and we'll, we ain't going to stop it here. We always welcome. We get you back, and we'll address some new questions. But I wanted to know, you do tutoring.
Yes.
You offer tutoring as kind of an a la carte part of of the other things you do. Could you tell us, for parents who want to get your tutoring for themselves or their kids, how would they arrange that?
So you can go to my website, allthismath.com, and there's a tab for contact us. And under the contact us tab, just leave some brief information, name, your email address. Your name, email address, maybe a phone number if you want me to call, or whether you want me to call or email, and just a brief note, about the ages of your children, what grades they're in, and I'll reach out to you. It's as simple as that. We can talk about that. But yeah, and for parents, I definitely want to leave parents with this. Just a couple things. Just lead by example. Have more math conversations with your children. Have conversations and include math in the conversation. If you order a pizza or whatever, talk about the fact that that's a circle. Talk about, the circumference of the pizza, the area of the pizza. Don't just tell your child, all right, if it's a large piece, it's cut into 8 slices. Don't just tell them, here, take 1 slice. Say, okay, you took a slice, you also take an eighth. Introduce, that's a mathematical conversation. Just a very organic mathematical conversation. That's the language of fractions. Right? A lot of children are scared of fractions, and it's because they're not introduced to fractions. They're unfamiliar with them. In school often has a way to compound this anxiety, right? Because schools often are not safe spaces for learning. Another thing with parents, we gotta man up and woman up. We gotta get over our own personal fears of math. We gotta get over that. We do. We just know it might be easier said than done. But we got to get over that. I understand that teacher yelled at you in 7th grade and embarrassed you in class. You didn't like your 10th grade geometry teacher or whoever. They cussed you out or made you feel uncomfortable, whatever. But we got to get over that for the sake of our children. Right. For the sake of our children, we got to get over that because we need to be able to help them with their work. Right? We don't want this deficiency to be intergenerational. And we also got to get out of this idea that we've all been socialized into. So it's going to be some work. It involves a paradigm shift. We have to disabuse ourselves of this idea that it is the school's responsibility to educate our children. Because a lot of times, I think the fact that we don't see a sense of urgency around us learning the math that we never learned, or getting over our fears around math, is because we feel a certain comfort in, like, nah, I can just send them to school. But what if the school wasn't there? What if the school got shut down? We would be moving differently. But I think we have to act as if the school is not there for primary education. School should be a space for practice. Schools should be a space for practice. We need to get primary education in the household, in the community. Another thing people say, I think a lot of times they're just trying to, again, punch down on Black people, but without offering any resources. But yeah, it sounds good to say, yeah, education is supposed to start in the home. That's great. That sounds good, and I agree with it. But I think that we have to show people how to do that and show people what that looks like, right? Okay,
Yeah.
how am I going to teach my child arithmetic using the Common Core math methods in my home? Cool. We got resources for you. We got the YouTube channel. We got the book, How to Use All This Math, Volume 1. Whatever you need. So then we'll have more resources going forward. But yeah. This is mandatory. Like we got to do this. This is not this is not extracurricular. It's not optional.
That's right.
It's not optional. We have to do this at this point. Yeah.
We talk about nation building all the time, Brother Akil, and I see myself as I'm here to reform nationalism and Pan-Africanism, to make it stretch, to make it be more relevant, to make it be more practical, more grounded and operationalized. That's part of my mission. And one thing I tell the brothers is, man, you gotta be able to break it down so a little kid can understand it. So for instance, you talked about spades. What math do you do in spades? Well, you'd be like, how many books you got? So what you doing? You looking to see how many aces and right? Okay, then you like, well, there's 13 books. There's 4 of us playing. I got 3, and he said he got 4 and impossible. Wait a minute, that's like 6 or 7. How many books are left? So you do all that is straight up math. Yeah, and then the thinking of when you get really good at it, you get into the probability of, I wonder what they got. What's the percentage of chance that he got the big joker or she got the little joker or the the ace of spades or whatever the cards may be. That's what you really get good at. But it's all mathematics. It's all mathematics. So I think if people would understand that, that's the way to diffuse a lot of that negative propaganda around math, by also showing people that what you're already doing successfully, that is complex and complicated for many people. There's a lot of math embedded within that, but just nobody told you that was math. That's right. That's the problem. My uncle told me, stay with me to this day. I was little, and I just met this thing going. I was fascinated by the clicking sound, but I didn't understand what it was and why he needed it. And when he explained it, he said, "Listen, man, everything is math." I was like, "Everything is math." I didn't quite get it, but I get it now. He planted that seed. I definitely get it. He planted that seed. Yeah, if you didn't get it when you was ready. Get that. Yeah. So look, man. Listen, brother. We thank you for having the vision and the passion to take your gift and the thing that turns you on, right, and bring it to the community in a way that is accessible through the YouTube channel, through the books, and through appearing on other people's channels. That's very important. And for blending our history with the math to make both more palatable. Appreciate you for that. We're gonna have you back on, good brother. If you ever have a product or an event or initiative you're trying to get out to people, let us know. Come on, because we only have close to 6,000 subscribers. But when I look at the metrics, they say, man, anywhere from 20,000 to 50 to 100,000 people come through here in a week. They're just not subscribing as much. So that means we got a wide viewership. So if you're trying to get something out, man, let us know and come on through, and we'll definitely give you a space to promote it or whatever. I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. Yeah. And peace to my young brother Kwame, man. He been so quiet. I want to hear that brother say something. Kwame. Well, let me take. I want to know how old is he? How old are you? What grade are you in? What's your favorite subject? Gotta speak up, man. How old are you?
6.
6. And what's your favorite subject?
That's cool. Math, reading.
Not sure. That's okay. What's your favorite color? That's all right. Tell me something about your dad that you're proud of. Something good about your dad, so the whole world who watches this show will know what you think about your dad. Tell me something really good about your father.
That he teaches me math.
What did he say, Akil?
Say it louder. Say it louder.
That he teaches me math.
You gotta say it louder, bro. You gotta speak up, man. You gotta say it with your chest. You gotta speak up.
I can't hear him. Yeah.
Say one more. Say it one more time. Nice and loud. Louder. Louder. He said that he teaches me math.
Hey, that's what's up, brother. You got a phenomenal blessing of having a dad who's really good at math and teaches it to you. That's a blessing, man. So, all right, good. I want to give Kwame a shout out, you know. And when you start getting all the millions of dollars, I just want 5%. So you're gonna have to figure that out with your dad. I'm joking. Love y'all, man. Thank y'all for coming through. And once again, people, go to All This Math YouTube channel, subscribe, check out how to use All This Math, Brother Akil Parker's book. And also, if you want tutoring, check out allthismath.com, and you'll find the section to put in the information, and you can set up some private tutoring with our brother as well. With that said, family, we got to get our math together. We got to normalize the things that are nation building skills, not just shaking our booty on TikTok commercials. For real. Like, we got to really talk about what do we do to hedge our bet, to advance ourselves. You know, we talk about science and war and all these things. All those things require some type of science, math, technology, analysis, computation. So let's get with it, family. We could change the whole paradigm by changing what we talk about at the dinner table, changing what we give a lot of energy to. We can change the whole dynamic. We don't have to wait for some famous leader to tell us to do that. We could do that right in our homes, in our places of worship and all of that. So with that said, Brother Akil, thank you, good brother. Thank you, Kwame, for joining us.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, and we will see you around. Subscribe to the channel and support our brother too. Don't just say it was a good broadcast. We also got to get out of that. We have to be more demonstrative. We have to support, you know, like in the crack era, we had a lot of our people supported the drug dealers.
That's true.
Imagine if our people supported math and homeschooling and self-defense and all these and African-centered schools and writing curriculums the way we support some of these more nefarious things. Family, it changes the whole game. It changes the whole game. So with that said, man, peace and black power, kusa to the family. We can accomplish what we will, like Marcus Garvey said. We can get over our fears, organize, study, work together, have faith in ourselves, better in ourselves, build our own institutions. We can be free and liberated, and we can experience sovereignty and self-determination one day, one step at a time. Thank you, man. Peace, family. Black power.
Peace.